Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Bree has missed 2 episodes in a row, Zach. I think me personally.
She's got a bye week. We're like the coaches, coming in, grinding film. She's like Drew Lock going down to Cancun or Cabo or whatever.
I mean, it's getting out of control here on Let's Talk Broncos. We keep saying that we're going to make like a graphic or a tracker of who misses the most shows. I know that it's not me. So I don't want to speak for you guys, but I know it's not me.
Either you or Bree, like without a doubt.
I think it's Zach Sniggers would be hitting number 2 right now.
A ton. I've got like 2 absences on the season. It's crazy. I've got that perfect attendance bumper sticker on the back of my car.
Sure you do, man. Well, it is the bye week, Zach. It's kind of hard coming up with a bunch of topics to do for this, but I think one that is interesting and what we're going to address today is we're just going to talk about, hey, we're at this mid-season mark now. What are the Broncos' biggest strengths and weaknesses? And I think it's kind of interesting just because, I don't know, the Broncos are a lot different than what we anticipated them this offseason, which is where we made another video like this. I don't think everything has come exactly the way we thought it would. So, Zach, do you want to start off with strengths or weaknesses today?
I mean, let's start with some strengths. I don't know. I'm feeling positive. I guess that means we have to end with some weaknesses, but I'll open with a strength here. The offensive line. And I think that's maybe a bit of a hot take. I don't think it should be. This offensive line is playing really, really good. They're one of 3 units right now that is a top 7 in 2 different categories. Those categories being, pass block win rate and run block win rate. They're one of 2 teams that are top 7 in both of those. The Eagles and Bills are the other 2. They are a very good all-around offensive line. In terms of pass block efficiency, they're rating in the where are they right here? They're 14th. Which again, above average, and more so than their pass blocking is their run blocking. Garrett Bowles is playing like an elite left tackle. He's absolutely playing up to that contract value. He's allowed very few pressures on the season. The penalties are way reduced from last season. He's been an absolute menace against the run. I think I cited it last show, but he's like top 10 in both run block win rate in power looks as well as gap scheme looks, gap scheme looks as well as zone looks. I'm a big fan of what we're seeing from this offensive line in general. I feel like they're finally clicking. It's an old, cliche. It gets brought up a lot. It takes a while for offensive lines to gel and start playing together, and it's a position group where the chemistry between all 5 guys is very important. I think as the season has gone on, that's built up. Lloyd Cushenberry is suddenly a strength. Quinn Miners is playing very well. I think Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, the more expensive additions, are kind of the just okay pieces on that line. And offensive line play is bad league wide. So I think some people see this offensive line and they don't think it's great. It's really good compared to what else is happening in the league. And then I also think the quarterback makes them considerably worse. PFF has a stat where they track who is allowing the pressures. Is it the left tackle, the right guard, or is it the quarterback? Because quarterbacks can create their own pressures. Russell Wilson is creating his own pressures at the highest rate of any starting quarterback in the NFL. That's going to make the offensive line look worse than they are.
Yeah, no, it definitely would. That is the big thing. I think people forget that, right? Or they're not. It's hard to evaluate until you actually go and watch the film. Like, you see a quarterback take a sack. Whose fault is it? Was it a coverage sack? Is it on the offensive line? Is it a quarterback's fault? All that stuff is so hard to break down just watching the game. So when it does happen, when a sack does occur, where's the easiest place to blame? It is the offensive line all day long, and that's kind of the issue I think we have in Broncos country. Because guess what? The offensive line in almost all the other years were the issue. They were 1,000% the issue. It just happens to be different this year. Zach, my question to you is the offensive line better than you anticipated? The Broncos went out and made all of these big moves this offseason, but is it even better than you could have hoped for?
I think in some ways, for sure. Like Lloyd Cushenberry is playing a lot better than I expected. I had kind of given up on the idea of him becoming like a plus starter, I guess. And I think he's absolutely been that this year. Garrett Bowles, I was hammering this drum all off season. Like, hey, we should not be banking on this guy playing really good off a broken leg when he was already having a really bad season before the broken leg last year. And I'm wrong. I look like an idiot. I'm happy I'm an idiot there. He's been incredible. So I think in that respect, they've been better than I expected. I think Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey have been a little disappointing relative to what I was expecting of
Ben
them.
Powers, really? I think Ben Powers has been pretty fucking solid.
That's
McGlinchey's been bad. Ben Powers through, I think.
More so. McGlinchey more so for sure. I think Ben Powers has maybe I had too high of hopes. I think Frankie did a good job highlighting like, hey, this guy is one of the best pulling guards in the league. Start asking him to pull more. And I think as they've done that, he's looked a little better. I don't know. He's been a little under expectation for me. Mike McGlinchey has been a good bit under expectation for me. But as a whole, I think they're right about on pace, maybe a little better than I would have thought off season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I think they're even a lot better because of just I kind of knew what McGlinchey was when the Broncos signed him, and if you guys watched the film, you knew what Mike McGlinchey was. The Broncos just don't have the infrastructure to hide his weaknesses like the San Francisco 49ers did in years in the past. It was blatant watching the film. There were plays where it felt like the 49ers rather would have George Kittle block the defensive end than Mike McGlinchey out there. Like that was the type of player the Broncos picked up. And then, Zach, you said it. I wasn't expecting this massive jump from Lloyd Cushenberry. I didn't think that we would be seeing Garrett Bowles' second best year of his career. These are things that I just didn't see coming. So I think overall, blown me out of the water with just my expectation on the offensive line. It really has. Do you have something else to add, Zach?
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. And I want to really quick shout out to Zach Strief. I think he deserves a ton of credit for how well this unit is playing. Especially the young guys like Lloyd Cushenberry and Quinn Miners. I think coaching is very important for Garrett Bowles. Look at him under Butch Berry and look at him now. And yeah, tip of the cap. First year as an offensive line coach. I think the Broncos had a good one, and it's hard to imagine him getting like poached for another job. At least, like if he builds up a resume as a really unbelievable offensive line coach for years and years and years, maybe he starts getting those looks like a Mike Munchak eventually did. But I mean, you might have him as long as you have Sean Payton as your head coach. And I think that is the probably most like the defensive coordinator and offensive line coach are going to be the most important positions for Sean Payton to figure out annually. And I think a Broncos fan should feel pretty good thinking that like, okay, we have offensive line coach solved for the next half decade. I feel pretty confident saying that.
And Zach, it's funny, offensive line coaches very rarely get that opportunity to move up, like you mentioned. Like Mike Munchak, even, for example, it's not like he was a play caller or an offensive coordinator ever in his career. He went from O-line coach straight to head coach. Like that's the type of trajectory they have. Some of them might become like run game coordinators and stuff like that, but Mike Munchak was not that.
Yeah, it's a unique thing. And then the head coach thing didn't really work out. I don't think many people will do it, but it's so huge. And then also just having that consistency. Like I don't even know off the top of my head how many offensive line coaches Garrett Bowles has had, but I think a lot. like 6, probably 5, somewhere in there.
Right.
Despite being drafted in 2017, having a guy who's like, and then of course applies to Cushenberry and Miners too. Having a guy who's teaching these I don't know, techniques the same way year in, year out, year over year is going to have benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Zach, shout out Zach Strafe. My big positive for the Broncos, Zach, I'm going to keep it with the coaching. I'm just going to keep going with Sean Payton. I think he's the biggest strength of this team right now. I really do. Through it all, Sean Payton has been the best asset to this team. The offense just looks better than it has in years in the past, even with a Russell Wilson that I'm not sure is very good. Like this Chiefs win last week, that was a feather in Sean Payton's cap. It really, really was. To go out there and have your quarterback, how many passes did he throw over 15 yards? I think it was like 2 completed passes over 15 yards last game, and still pull out a victory, a dub. That is a massive, massive thing to your coaching staff. And it's not like you have a great defense either. They're starting to pull it around and put pieces together. But on paper, this defense isn't talented. This offense isn't very talented outside of an offensive line and running back group. I don't know how they are doing what they're doing. And that typically that's just, hey, our head coach is really doing a killer job out there. Zach, give me your evaluation of Sean Payton. Is he living up to expectation in your eyes, or whatever your expectation you set before the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks awesome. That would be my biggest source of optimism right now if I was a Broncos fan. We were talking on here 3 weeks ago. I was saying, I don't know, the thought had at least entered my head that, hey, maybe this guy has just lost his fastball, because I do think there were some issues. There were some weird clock things, like getting the play in and everything, where it's just, I don't know, it did look funky. He definitely looks like he's back. I think he's coaching this team tremendously well. I think they're playing a lot better than their talent level. I like Judy and Sutton and Mims at wide receiver, but you need more than 3 guys in a modern receiver room. And beyond that, the Broncos have like practice squatters. With Greg Dulcich gone at tight end, they have a very low wattage tight end room. I think the offensive line is good. But again, I think a lot of them being good is what the coaching is doing for them with Zach Streif and whatnot, developing some of the talent in that room. And then Russell Wilson is playing like a game manager, except he's taking a lot of negative plays. Ideally, you want your game manager to just take what's there and not really hurt you. I do think Russ is taking what's there, but he's also hurting you with these big sacks that he kind of takes on. And in spite of all that, the Broncos are the 15th best defense in the league per DVOA. EPA, I think, has them like 14th. They're a middle of the road NFL offense. And I don't think they are a middle of the road NFL offense in terms of talent. You definitely have to credit Sean Payton for that. Beating the Chiefs. I think there's just you saw Hackett come in here and he had the whole beat the West thing. But I do think there's something about, I think coaches are so responsible for culture and instilling a belief that hey, we can finally beat the Chiefs. Does matter somewhat to me. I don't know. I'm thrilled with Sean Payton and the coaching in general, special teams. They've gone from, that's another feather in Sean Payton's cap. They've gone from being perennially a bottom 5 unit to they are top 3 in special teams DVOA this season. Just a huge turnaround. I'm a huge fan of what Sean Payton's been doing. Even Vance Joseph now. Vance Joseph running Vic Fangio stuff is a very bad defensive coordinator. Vance Joseph running the Vance Joseph stuff looks kind of like what I was expecting this offseason. I felt like an idiot the first 4 games of the season because I was like, man, I think Vance Joseph might not be that bad. And it was terrific. And I was like, man, I'm an idiot. But now he's kind of doing what I was hoping he'd do, a little more aggressive. We're seeing some fun pressure packages. I don't know. Vance Joseph running the VJ stuff, I think, is a pretty okay defensive coordinator at least. And so, yeah, I definitely think coaching in general is a big strength for the Broncos right now.
Yeah, I agree. Man, you brought up the clock management at the beginning of the season. I just wanted to talk about that real quick. Bro, that is turned into such a clearly a Russ issue. Getting the play in and out. who remembers last year? Like that was a fiasco the entire year, and ever since Sean has put the wristband on him, it feels like that issue has evaporated. Like that is no longer that's not anything close to even thinking or speaking about anymore. Zach, do you have any other strengths you want to highlight before we move to weaknesses, or are you good?
Yeah. I want to talk about Javonte Williams. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about with the offensive line, or running backs in general. Sorry, because I want to give P. Ryan his love. I want to give Jaleel McLaughlin his love. This running back room is really, really good. I wish I went through the league before this and tried to list out all the ones that are better. But I think like this is definitely the best running back room in the AFC West. There are few in the NFL that I think would compare. They're awesome. The Javonte Williams is playing like rookie year Javonte Williams again, except I do think we've seen improved vision from him. Like he is a more mature player. He's the best version of Javonte Williams I think we've seen maybe. And that is crazy that we're saying this. I think his last injury was like October 31st. Maybe I'm totally mixing that up. It was like early October, but like 13 months or so removed from an extremely horrific knee injury. I think we're seeing the best version of Javonte Williams we've maybe ever seen. Jaleel McLaughlin is a special player. I think he is just in the sense of like his speed. I don't mean he's like, whoa, what a special. He's special in his lane of like a really fun, great scat back. I think he's like every bit Philip Lindsay. I don't know. I maybe he's got like a little less power and a little more juice. But it's so reminiscent of that to me. I think that's awesome. And then Shamaji P. Ryan, I think he's getting underrated because of all the hype and praise the other two are getting, but he's been fantastic too for this team. I think he's got like the least juice as a runner, but he's a very valuable piece in the passing game as both a receiver and a pass protector. If McLaughlin or Javonte Williams go down, I think they can plug Samaje Perine into those snaps, ask him to pick up some of the workload, and this offense won't miss too much of a beat. And I think that's a huge value for a team that I think wants to start building their identity around the run game. They've got 3 running backs I think they can really trust.
Yeah, I want to highlight McLaughlin real quick, dude. The speed isn't even what makes him special in my eyes. It's the vision. The vision is unbelievable from that guy. It's wild, really, really crazy stuff. Hitting his cutbacks and maneuvering people. When I'm talking about vision, he's making people miss at the second level before he's crossing the line of scrimmage, right? He's faking the linebacker this way and cutting it back this way to get those gains and everything like that goes into that. He's making the second level miss. He's making third level defenders miss. He's a real big problem with this vision. And then you pair that with the speed and his elusiveness and everything like that. He is a really fun player. You know, you brought up the Philip Lindsay conversation. Philip probably had more juice just going straight. Jaleel McLaughlin has more juice going side to side, I think, than Philip Lindsay. 2 different styled runners, but I like it because they're both small and they're both fast players. I get it.
And the burst with Jaleel, I think is, man, it's so special. Going back to Javonte, I think looking kind of like his old self since week 5. He is, I think, tied for first. Yeah, tied for first in the NFL in terms of explosive runs. Those are runs that go for 10 plus yards. Tied for first with him, Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara, and Jalen Warren. So a ton of like hyper explosive running backs. And then he's also tied for first in terms of missed tackles forced, which is looking at power as well as elusiveness with Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley with 9 missed tackles forced over the last or since week 5. So for the last 4 games for the Broncos. He's playing at an awesome level, in my
Good
opinion.
call then, Zach. I didn't think he was breaking tackles at high as a frequency as he is right now. I don't know what that is. My brain's just not processing it like it did in prior years. But that's very interesting to hear. That's an awesome stat to hear too, because really that was his game. Up
Yes.
until this year, that was his game. Was I'm forcing tackles. That's what I'm good out there for.
And it might not quite be at, I mean, what he was doing before was like historic rates. I think if we're
It
looking at
was insane.
per carry, because that's like he was dominating per carry. It was like him and Nick Chubb, top of the NFL by a mile. Per carry, I think what Jalen Warren's going to have him beat a little bit. Oh my God, Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman is probably leading the league right now. My God.
Yes, he's getting snaps to the Rams. Shout out to
He's been
Royce.
playing great for the Rams. Wow. But yeah, there's I think probably I'm having to do the math in my head really quick. There's probably 3-4 guys ahead of him in terms of like per carry missed tackles forced, but he's still doing that at an elite rate in the NFL. If you're top 5, top 6 at something, I think that's pretty elite. And yeah, it's rounding into form. I feel like he's only going to get better as the season goes on. It seems like that's the current trajectory, at least over these past few weeks.
Yeah, totally. And I love to see it. I love to see it. Zach, my bold prediction at the beginning of the year, if the damn Broncos stuck to the run at the beginning of the year, I might have a case. In efficiency, I know I have a case. It just didn't happen. But I wanted the Broncos to be a top 3 rushing team in the NFL. They're nowhere near close to that, but on an efficiency level, they shouldn't be too far off. That's all I'm saying.
They, yeah, on the season they ranked 12th, by the way, for people curious. They're about where would they need to get to? They'd have to get to 148 yards. So they 32 yards per game. You know, they could maybe get there. Over their last 3, though, to your point, they are very close. It's they would rank 4th. They're averaging 137 yards per game on the ground over their last 3 weeks.
And Zach, even early in it, when I definitely didn't look like I had any chance in hell of getting a top 3 running game, in efficiency they were. I remember talking about this on Broncos Country tonight with you, and you looked up the stat. They were top 3. So I'm not missing out that too bad. Like, I actually had an idea here. All right? Damn. But Zach, let's move into the weaknesses. What is your weakness for the Broncos you most want to highlight?
Yeah, for me, there's a couple I thought about for this one. I'm going to go with Fabian Moreau. I think he's been playing really well.
Really?
Don't get me wrong.
Weakness. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, he's been playing really well, or just cornerback too, I should say. I don't want to highlight just Fabian Moreau, but cornerback too in general, opposite Patrick Surtain. I've got some serious questions. I think Moreau's played fine these past couple weeks. Cornerback's a high volatility position though. This is a guy that was like buried on the roster and was like a late off-season signing for very little money for a reason, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. I think there's a very good chance. I don't think you can bank on Fabian Moreau doing this week in and week out. Especially like you look at who his first 2 opponents has been. It's been a Chiefs team that everyone talks about how poor their wide receivers are, and a Packers team that has the youngest group of offensive skill players in the league, a very inexperienced group, although I do think they have some talent. And then you've got Jordan Love pulling the trigger there, which is going to further hamstring the passing game. I wonder if he's going to be able to hold up as the competition picks up. I think he's been very good so far. It's not about his play so far. I just still worry about, again, secondary is a weak link position group where it's defined by your weakest link, not your strongest player. And I don't know. I'm still worried about what that weakest link could be. Even if Fabian Moreau keeps up this level of play all season, he is an older cornerback, and you are an injury away from being back to Damari Mathis at cornerback. Maybe Riley Moss, but they've made Riley Moss a healthy scratch or are playing him almost no snaps per week, even on special teams. I don't think this coaching staff really trusts Riley Moss, at least at this point in his career. I don't know. You need good coverage, especially with this pass rush that is still taking longer than any other pass rush in the NFL to get to the quarterback. You need your secondary to hold up well in coverage. And I think McMillan's great. I think Surtain's great. I've got big questions about that last cornerback spot.
Yeah, and you only are as strong as your weakest cornerback in the secondary, your weakest link. You can pick on that weak guy pretty easily. Now, I do want to point out he has looked pretty solid since he's gotten his reps in there. I thought he's looked good, but like you said, does it hold up? That's really the worrisome part. Is and that's where I could see the weakness of what you're talking about. Can he continuously play the way he did? Because, like you said, he was a street free agent. He was a guy that was just out there. It's not like the Broncos offered him this big contract or anything like that. No, he was looked as a depth piece in case someone got hurt, and Damari Mathis was supposed to step up into this role this season, and that just has not happened. So now it is Moro's job out there.
His last two deals, he signed a $1 million in 2021. He signed a 1-year deal with the Falcons for $1 million. Then he goes to the Giants and signs a 1-year deal for $800,000. And then he goes to the Broncos for $1.1 million.
Yeah,
As a late summer free agent. Like at the cornerback position, the NFL has determined consistently that this guy's value is like $1 million per year at cornerback. Look at the other cornerbacks making that. I do think he's played very well so far. I'm struggling to bank on it over a sample, especially considering who he's done it against so far. It's promising. I need to see a little more, and they have no answers behind him. All their eggs are in the Fabian Moreau basket, and for me, that's why it's a weakness.
yeah, and I understand it. For me, though, Zach, I'm going to go with tight end for the Broncos. I think that is a terrible position group. I think they're a big fat zilch in the passing game, matter of fact. A big fat zilch. They're not offering you a damn thing out there. Adam Troutman's not. And Zach, do you remember this conversation I was having with you before the season about tight end position and how it feels like when you're trying to get one of those, ooh, I want one of the tight ends that can do a little of everything, guys. They really just aren't good at anything.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Adam Troutman.
do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, Adam Troutman.
And that's what I'm kind of seeing here from Adam Troutman. All right, he's better at Greg Dulcich than blocking, but Greg Dulcich just isn't good at blocking. Like I at least like Chris Manhertz to me has been the most valuable piece in this tight end room. And why is it? Because he's damn good at least one thing. Get me these type of guys. He's at least damn good at something, and that's blocking. Adam Troutman's out here. All right, he's a cool blocker. And he's supposed to be a cool receiver, but he's doing nothing. He's not breaking tackles after he catches it. He's not being even really targeted that much. And then I just have no passing option in my entire tight end room. Where am I looking to throw the ball? None of them make sense.
The only option there was Greg Dulcich. And at this point, I mean, tight end is going to be a position, specifically like a pass catching tight end, is something that I'm going to be watching some film of when we're doing like our draft previews and everything. I think Greg Dulcich has been awesome when on the field. There have been 25 regular season games in Greg Dulcich's career up until this point. He has played 12 of them. I don't know. For me, right now I'm thinking he might never be reliable in terms of health. He might just be one of those guys that has the injury bug and it won't pan out, despite I think being a very talented pass catcher. They need to find something in this room. They need to find some more juice somewhere. I think the investment in Adam Troutman, if you want to find a flaw for Peyton, I think that was probably a poor gamble. Yeah, I don't know. They got to find something. It's bad. I described it as low wattage earlier, and I think that's the perfect word for it. Chris Manhertz as a blocker is plus. Like, that's awesome. He is a great blocker at the tight end position. I don't know what else you're getting from anyone in that room that is above average.
Thank you.
Which you had Albert O maybe.
No.
Still can't get on the field for the Eagles, everybody. Still cannot get on the field for the Eagles.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I worry with Sean Payton though. Like Greg Dulcich, he still wouldn't even if he was with the Broncos now and wasn't injured. I still don't think he would be getting a ton of snaps, Zach. I think he would be your only pass catching option there. But I still think the way the Broncos value blocking, even from their wide receiver positions, it would be really tough for Greg Dulcich to get fields other than obvious passing situations or when they're spreading it out. I think he'd be utilized more like a big slot than anything. I really do in this offense. I'm not sure he's an actual tight end in Sean Payton's eyes. You remember they called him the Joker?
Yeah.
I thought everyone was like making that like this is a really cool deal that he's the Joker. I thought it was like, oh, Sean Payton doesn't have a position for this guy, kind of.
Yeah.
That's the way I was looking at it. And looking back, I still think that. Especially when the first depth chart came out and he wasn't listed as number 1.
He was like number 3, I think. Or maybe he was just number 2.
He was number 2, I think.
Yeah.
So something interesting and something to keep in mind when you are evaluating those tight ends. What are these guys' role in the offense? What is Sean Payton going to be asking them to do? I think is a question we should be asking ourselves. Do you have any other weaknesses, Zach?
Yeah, I threw out an additional strength, so I'll throw out an additional weakness to close this out here, especially because I think it has to be mentioned. The defensive line. Yeah, I think the edge guys are playing well. I think Zach Allen has turned it on, but man, you need more, like Zach Allen is not going to make your defensive front. Defensive fronts rotate their snaps a lot. And they are still relying very heavily on like Jonathan Harris and Elijah Garcia. And again, if you get one injury to a Zach Allen or to a DJ Jones or whatever, what's the plan behind them? Mike Purcell has been sneaky good this year. Again, Zach Allen's rounding into form, but DJ Jones has not been nearly as good as he was last season. That hasn't gotten a lot of buzz, but I think he's taken a good step back. And again, they just have no depth there. That I think is going to be a consistent problem throughout the season. I think if teams really want to punish the Broncos on the ground, they're going to be able to do so because they just don't have the bodies up front. Yeah.
I definitely disagree. Or I definitely agree with you on this one. It is a massive weakness for the Broncos. And you know what the issue is, Zach? It's just shallow everywhere. It's just not – there's not a lot of guys that are taking that unit to the next level. And a lot of times that only takes one player. If you plug and played any type of Pro Bowl-esque edge in this room, it would be night and day difference. Or if you put in a Pro Bowl or all pro defensive or interior defensive lineman in this unit, it would make a night and day difference. They have a bunch of cool. They have no great. They have nothing even close to great. And that's kind of the issue with this defensive line group. But Zach, I think that's going to be all for us today. I'm speaking here again with Zach. Where are you going to end up on the rankings of Broncos media members?
That's a good question. I'm hoping. I mean, I haven't checked. I think it's all the way out now. I know I was not.
You're number 1.
I think I wasn't. I know I wasn't number 5 through 20 or 6 through 20 rather. So I know I'm in the top 5. Bree's ranked number 20. So like definitely like College Game Day is definitely coming to see the two of us, number 5, number 20. We'll get them to show up.
Zach, I mean, I don't know how far we are, but I'm sure we do have to make the list somewhere on it. It would just be disrespectful if we weren't. So yeah, if we're at 3, I guess we're 2-1, man. But anyways, guys, that is it for us today.
Number 1.
Make sure you are liking, subscribing, everything. We're doing Broncos podcast. It's the bye week right now for the Broncos. Yet we're still out here talking ball, making stuff happen. Anyways, guys, have a great rest of your day.